All right, barbecue nerds, fire up those pits and clear some space on your cutting board because you're tuned into the Barbecue Nerds podcast. I'm your host, the dry rub doctor, the sultan of sizzle, and your meat side mentor, Dave, aka the real meat stick. But tonight's special because sitting across from me isn't just a co-host. He's the man who engineered fire into function, the welder of dreams, and pitmaster of precision. The fabricator from Canton who made steel sexy again. He's the dude who built the pit that turns burgers into brisket level glory. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the one and only Dustin El Presidente McCormick.
Boy, you made me feel like a Wild West hero riding into town on a brisket or something with that intro.
Yeah, I know you live and breathe this pit life, but tonight we're diving deep into direct heat cooking with the Smokeslinger. You know, some of the things that come to mind, and I hear this quite often, is why choose a Smokeslinger? This isn't just a smoke or a grill. This is barbecue technology at its finest, wouldn't you say?
Well, I say it's kind of like your meat. You want to know where your meat's coming from. You want to know where your pit's coming from. Well, in this case, it's coming from all U.S. steel. We cut it in Kaufman, Texas. It's laser precision and built to last.
You better believe it. And thanks to our partnership with Smoker Builder, these cookers are backed by performance and innovation. Shipped straight to your door. So, yeah. Justin, when someone gets a pit from you, when you build these, what can they expect? What's the total package?
Well, you're going to get a total of 4 grates. You got 2 upper, 2 lower. You're going to get tuning plates, and that'll vary in quantity, whether it's the mini or the full size. And you'll get you got dampers on both firebox doors to control your air lint intake. You've got your exhaust dampers, 5-inch casters. Sorry, guys, hold on. I got to pop up on my computer here. It's got a grease strain on the bottom. It's got slide-out charcoal boxes on it with charcoal risers to keep it breathing well. So it's pretty much fully loaded to do smoking or grilling or pretty much anything you want to on it.
What about tuning plates? I hear a lot about tuning plates when it comes to the Smokeslinger.
Yeah, so the tuning plates, they're about 5 inches wide, and the full size, I believe there's 9 in that. And what that allows you to do is set it up in what guys would call the offset mode or reverse mode if you want to do like the low and slow style cooking. Or you can spread them out evenly and create a high temperature, more of an indirect cook, but a really high temp cook. Or you can take them completely out and go full direct heat. Or you can create temperature zones where you can actually direct heat cook on one side while you smoke low and slow on the other side.
So with these tuning plates, it sounds like it gives you the opportunity, like you mentioned here, we can go low and slow, hot and fast, offset, reverse offset, direct heat, indirect heat. Pizza oven, is that a possibility as well?
Oh, yeah. Makes killer pizza. We do that once in a while with the neighbors, and it's always pretty amazing.
What about Santa Maria style? It seems to be the popular trend right now. That and Argentinian live fire cooking.
Oh, yeah. Of course, you can cook that style above the charcoal boxes, which is about 24 inches, or you can actually pull them out and set them on the tuning plates and cook within inches if you want. So you got your upper and lower grates that you can use to get different temperatures if you want, or different cooking styles.
Interesting. It reminds me almost like the old school charcoal grills. So if you have that that charcoal pan sitting there on your tuning plates and you're using the lowest level of your grates, couldn't you use it just like a charcoal grill?
Oh yeah, definitely. Hamburgers, steaks. Actually, what I do with steaks is I'll have, if I want to get really fancy with some really good steak, is I'll have tuning plates on the left. I'll have a charcoal box running in it. I'll have my steaks to the right with a kind of a smoldering fire down below just to give it some smoke. basically a reverse sear. And once that gets up to temp, I'll slide that grate over the charcoal box and kind of sear it off. And if you give it a little shake, all that fat drips and flames up and creates a really nice sear on it. It's pretty incredible.
This thing is a beast with direct heat. Now, I know from experience that I can cook with charcoal or wood. I like both. I think that the advantage to something like this is if I want to do that sort of set it and forget it type of cook, I'll load both my charcoal baskets up and then I can walk away for 3 to 4 hours, which is amazing because it allows me to go do something else. However, when I want to do that low and slow cook, I know you're familiar with that, especially having the Liberty 94 offset.
Oh, yeah.
I'm able to start off with that bed of charcoal, and then little by little, I feed it in a couple of sticks every now and then till I'm at the point where I'm not using charcoal anymore. I'm 100% dedicated to that point using that post oak wood that I have. I get mine as 8-inch splits and I fit them in. That I found that to be the perfect size. So I use those all the time.
Well, you make a good point because I'm in Texas. I got post oak falling on me everywhere, So see, it's super easy to get, but in some parts of the country you can't. So you made a good point with starting with charcoal because that's more readily available and probably a lot cheaper for some people to establish your bed of coals and then start feeding your splits because you're going to use a lot of splits to create that bed of coals versus what you would use just purchasing some charcoal and doing it that way.
Yeah, I get my wood from a supplier. Like you said, you're in Texas. I'm here in Pennsylvania. Post oak is a native to this area. We have white oak, red oak. We have cherry, black cherry, some other types. What's that?
Oak's a good one. Red oak is a good one.
Red oak is good, but what I found is that unless you're really good at knowing how to dry your wood out properly, a lot of the wood that I'm able to get is great for fireplaces in the house or outdoors. But for like cooking grade to get that correct humidity in the wood, I've been using a firm out of Georgia, Cutting Edge Firewood. They give me a box of wood that's perfect. Each one perfect, kiln dried, 8-inch pieces. I put those in. They spark themselves right up. It's amazing stuff. But let me ask you, whether you're using wood or charcoal, would you say that building your zones is what's important? Knowing how to control your airflow, whether it's a windy day or it's cold out, that with the Smokeslinger, it being that it's 1/4-inch thick U.S. steel, it holds that temperature rock solid.
Oh, yeah. You'll even see it in the Smokeslinger pit owners group. You'll see a lot of guys commenting on how well it holds temp in the wind. A lot of times I have a south wind on my house and my cooker's in the front facing north. I get a lot of turbulent air that's going every which direction. It doesn't really seem to phase it. But yeah, as fire management on this thing is so easy to learn. It's almost like running kind of like a drum smoker.
So I think we got a couple of questions we got a couple of questions that are coming in. I'm looking here in the chat. I don't want to hold people up. Looks like we've got a question here from Correctional Officer 4 Lockdown. Dustin, can you use a Santa Maria grill attachment with the Smokeslinger? That's a great question. I know that's going to feed into something.
Yeah, you could, if you had a Santa Maria that would fit in that space, of course, you could build some kind of bracket or whatnot to set it on there. And then you could actually, if you wanted to, put the tuning plates on the very top level, grate level. They could slide off, so be careful, but you could put them in there and then put your, probably actually on the lower grate level, put the baffles in there, then set your firebox, and then put your Santa Maria on top.
I hear from people all the time what they love a lot about the Smokeslinger is its modular design. Right. Was the idea of being an innovator in the industry, making this future proof so eventually there might be accessories that people can bolt on? Was that why you went with this modular design?
Yeah, part of it. We didn't want to weld the hinges on. We wanted to find some other way to fashion those on there, sort of like a blacksmith maybe would have with rivets. Of course, we didn't use rivets. We used bolts and nuts. That's part of it. But yeah, part of it is the modular design. One, if something was to get damaged in shipping, we can send a new one out. You bolt it on, you're back in business. Also, like you said, if there are accessories or improvements made in the future, just about everything on this bolts on, so it's very modular and interchangeable.
That's incredible. You know, when I was with you in Texas, one of the things that we did was we pulled all of the charcoal pans out. We pulled out those rails. That happens to be on version 2. You can do that. And you and I and Frank were up pitching hot coals. Really, Frank and I more. But you did supply the burn barrel. I appreciate that. And of course, the afterburner torch, which brings us into Top Gun Maverick 3. I was at full mock pits.
You should see mine.
Your burn barrel, simply from the torch that you brought along, and you of course did a little tweaks to it because it was hard to maintain it. It kept wanting to jerk itself away from all that power. We got that burn barrel glowing orange. The fire, the embers that were emulating out of the top of that, just incredible. I'll tell you, one of the things, the takeaways were, it wasn't the most efficient way of cooking. The amount of wood that we went through just to be able to create the coal bed that was necessary to pitch into the bottom. You get a 48.5-pound pig, it came out incredible. There wasn't one dry eye in the crowd as they reached in and took a bite of the best bite of barbecue.
Yeah, that style of cooking is about 2 miles per gallon. When it comes to wood.
That's a great way of putting it.
But, you know, to touch back on something you mentioned earlier, I know a lot of guys have asked about this in the group, or at least there was one today, I think. He was asking about drying wood. So what I usually do is take my splits, and they're usually 16 inches or so long, 18 inches. I don't cut them down. I just split them. I do a lot of them into like 2x2 pieces, and then some in 3x3 pieces. Once I get a bunch of those chopped up, I'll put the tuning plates in. I'm doing this on the full size. I put them in from the left side all the way over to the first rail you hit on the right firebox. And then I log cabin stack that wood, those splits on the tuning plates. I stack it like every 3 inches one direction and crossways 3 inches, and then just continue that up and stack it all the way up as high as you can. And then just get you a charcoal base going in that lower right drawer, and use that intake vent and your upper left exhaust vents, and just set that to run about 200, and just let it run 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours. That makes it run like a sewing machine. Super easy. Your wood ignites instantly. You get a nice clean smoke. And also that can be used in the cold smoke method, which we need to demonstrate one day or have a
let me tell you, it's coming. You're a mind reader, because I want to dive into some of the questions from our Facebook barbecue fam, from our channel. Now, one of the questions that came in was people asking for, let's call it a start here guide for meats. They were looking at chicken, ribs, sausages, basic stuff. So I, little by little, put a little something together. This is, came to mind here. And I just want to have this out there for those that are listening, that when it comes to chicken, if you're making your halves or your quarters, I found that the best temperature to get your Smokeslinger up to is about 375 to 450. My fuel on this, I'd recommend going with charcoal along with some applewood. And then as far as my vents go, I keep my bottom halfway open, and they're a half moon vent. What do you call that thing? A pinwheel damper? Is that the correct term?
Not quite. A pinwheel damper has kind of like 2 holes in it.
Okay.
But this is just like a semicircle, I guess. I don't really have a name for it.
So I keep my semicircle.
That's what I drew and used.
I call the semicircle the smiley face, halfway open. That's a good way of calling it, smiley face. I keep that halfway open, and then my top air vents, I keep those about a third of the way open. And I feel that that's the best way to pull the oxygen in through the bottom. That way, I'm able to get that charcoal bed in the wood as hot as possible. And then, obviously, as the grease is dripping down off of my chicken, it goes right there into my charcoal pan. First, clearly, it's hitting on the on my tuning plates. And talk about tuning plates. When I'm doing chicken, I don't put all 8 across. I'll separate them out. Typically, I'll take about half of them out. I'm only using 4. And I'll space them out because I want the grease to come down and hit the fire. But I also want it to hit those red hot tuning plates get that sizzle, and bring the smoke right back up to infuse into my chicken.
It's not just smoke; it's steam as well. So it's
It's
moisture.
true. True.
But you
So
know,
you do.
when you have the tuning plates in, your fat's just not dripping everywhere on your coals.
Mhm.
You're kind of creating a drip edge, so it's getting in some of the coals, but you still have a lot of them not touched, so they're burning really hot. And then if that starts to burn, kind of like a grease fire down on the coals, that's not going to matter because you got those tuning plates in. Plus,
No.
I've really never had a grease fire in one yet. I haven't, but I guess the way it runs, it's just not allowing enough oxygen in.
Well, we when we were down in Canton, we did that cook with the whole hog. If there was a time for a grease fire, that would have been the day. We had no grease fire, and I think that's a testament to the way that this cooker is set up, cooking on coals rather than directly on, say over a live fire, which you're able to do, but you do it in moderation. If you just had a roaring fire coming from underneath, like a fireplace, there's probably a better chance that not only are you going to have a grease fire, but you're going to get that carbon blackness all over the food that you're cooking. And nobody wants to see that. Let's get to the next food because this comes up, ribs. So we've got your pork ribs, you've got your beef ribs. I know you recently did a rack of those dino beef ribs, those 3-bone plate ribs. Did you not? That
Oh
face
yeah,
says it all.
yeah. I used the cold smoke method on that I mentioned, and I would put those ribs up against any top 50 restaurant.
You're saying that
I,
Dustin McCormick is ready to
I'm
take
not.
on the top 50?
No, and I don't want to.
El Presidente?
I cook for fun. I don't want to do it for a business. So no, these were. It was really good, but I cold smoked them at about 170 for about 4 hours in the Smokeslinger,
Right.
using the dried wood method and the splits like I talked about. But going back to chicken I think a lot of people underestimate how hot you need to get that.
I know.
You're going to have to
You have
go
to get the
north of
rubbery skin.
325. Yeah, you got to go north of 325 to really get that skin to crisp. But I tell you a little ninja secret. So if you spatchcock your chickens, you're running, let's say I'm running on the full size. I've got all the tuning plates out. I'm running really good briquette fires in both. I got some maybe wood chunks or some small splits. Get the vent set up to run about 450 degrees. Then on the top rack, put all your chickens in there, spatchcocked. Shut the lid, shut the vents, walk away for about 20 minutes. Open those vents up, just barely crack all the vents, maybe a 1/4 inch, and open the lid and let it cool off a second and close it and get it back down to 325 or so and finish it off skin down. 325, 350. You're going to think you would think you had smoked that chicken for 4 hours.
And the skin.
It's not too heavy of a smoke, but it's smoky, but you get the crispy skin as well.
That's what you need. That's what people want to hear about, that crispy skin. Nobody wants that rubbery skin. Get that out of here. Get that. Nobody wants that.
Yeah, I think crispy skin's harder than cooking a masterclass brisket.
Mm-hmm.
To me.
See, when I'm doing wings, I like my wings with crispy skin. So I'll line those things up. And actually, I got this from one of our Smokeslinger owners, Mr. Derek Lewis, Mr. Nike himself. I watched him and the way that he was doing his chicken wings. He gets those things right up there at high temperature, and he's able to get that skin nice and crispy. And when he does it, he's able to just pull, like, all the meat comes right off the skin, everything in one bite. That man is a master of chicken. One day we're going to bring him on live with us. We'll have that conversation. Let me get to the next one. The sausage, whether it's linked or you're looking at rope. I cook my sausage between 275 to 325. The wood that I'll use on this one, sometimes I'll just go straight charcoal. I'll tell you that. I like that lump charcoal. But if I want to infuse the flavor, I'm not doing a cold smoke on this one. I'm going hot. I keep it 275 to 325. And that's the range. So I'm really setting it about 300 is where I want to be. but my temperature swings because of the grease on that. If I'm adding wood to it, I like to go with a cherry wood. The rationale behind that is I don't have pecan available. I can only store so much wood here. Cherry is available. And cherry, what I find is with pork, whether you're doing a pork shoulder, a pork butt, or even pork sausage, is that it just really gives it that nice red, that mahogany to it.
Oh, yeah.
I think if you're doing the same thing here, if we're doing a cold smoke and we were using cherry, I think cherry or even black cherry would just give it such an amazing color. And again, with the vents, when I'm doing that one, the bottom vents, the smiley face vents, I keep them cracked just a little bit. And the top vents, I keep them about halfway open.
Yeah, I find typically you're cooking a lot hotter than I am, usually.
I like it
But
hot. I'm mucho caliente. Look at
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that's wrong.
I was born this way.
But I think I do need to be cooking hotter on the chicken. Yeah, usually I find myself for like 325. I'm running about a quarter on the bottom vents and about a quarter to half on the top, somewhere in that range. But it depends on the fuel as well. If you've got run-of-the-mill lump charcoal, to me it doesn't seem to burn as hot. If I run like that B&B competition briquettes,
right,
and I fill the tray and then I light the top with the torch, that stuff gets crazy hot. I run about 600, 500 to 550 when we do pizzas, and that's what I use.
Good one. I'm glad you brought the pizza side up, because with making pizza, it brings us into the planches as well. Now, the planches don't come standard with the Smokeslinger. However, the newest planches that you created are a 2-piece split plancha. And what I find is really unique about that is you only have to use one side. That means that you can use your one side for making all those breakfast items or your Tex-Mex items, or you want to play hibachi chef, you don't want to go take the family out for Japanese dinner, so be it. I know that you do that. You toss the egg up, catch it in your hat. I've seen you do it beforehand.
Oh, yeah, I do the choo-choo train and all that stuff.
Got the whole thing going. So one side you can do live fire grill. Maybe you're doing steak and eggs. You got your eggs, your bacon, cooking that with that rendered down beef tallow that you have.
Oh, yeah.
Using that as your grease, cooking that. And then on the other side, you got steak and eggs going, or ham and eggs, or whatever else that you're cooking. So that plancha really coming into play. Can you explain to me the best way to get that plancha hot, being that the firebox is so far below with your charcoal basket? What do you do in order to get that plancha up to heat?
Well, to get those up to heat or up to temp, it's radiant heat is what you want. So if you're going to run one or two, whatever you run, below it, have the tuning plates out, have the grates out. If you're using the firebox in the bottom, fill it up with your charcoal or your wood and light it. Well, wood's a lot harder to hit that temp because the radiant heat's just not as strong. But on really good briquettes, light the top and get them all burning, white hot. And then get your vent set for about 450, your temperature set for about 450 using the vents. And that 450 range seems to be a pretty good range using it that way. Cooking eggs, bacon, pineapple, whatever you want. The other way to do it is if your charcoal, you want it empty, then take your firebox drawer. You want one layer of briquettes in it. Get those burning white hot, and you'll have that sitting on top of the tuning plates, and then put the plancha above it. So that gives you, about 2 hours of grilling time, and it's just enough heat for basically to cook anything on it. And you can also position that firebox to the back or to the front, different, or maybe off to the corner, and you can create hot and cooler zones on the planchas.
What you just brought up was something I experienced live with Todd Michael Johns from Plowboys. I'm sure you've heard of this gentleman before, 4-time world champion of the American Royal. So what I learned with him, what he did live, is he had the split planches set up where one side was his hot zone for going direct heat, and then he used the other plancha for the cooler zone to be able to manage any type of overcooking. I thought that was a unique way of using it. And I'm a student for life. I'm a sponge. I'm always absorbing new knowledge. He taught me something new that day.
So did he have one right under it and then the other one at the bottom? The fireboxes?
That's correct. So one was directly underneath the plancha, and the other one was in the firebox.
That's a pretty good idea.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into that cold smoke. It's being that we're still on the sausage. We touched upon the planchas. We talked about the sausage. I know you've been passionate about cold smoking. You cold smoke ribs, you cold smoked other items.
It's been a passionate experimental phase here lately. But yeah, that process, you would think looking at it, because everybody used to scream, "Oh, your smoke's got to be clear. It's got to be clean, all this stuff," right?
Right.
No, it doesn't. If it smells good, it's going to taste good more than likely. That's what I go with. But the cold smoke process, it looks really dirty. But the results, I mean, look at Cooper down at Bar A. He's doing it.
That's right.
So I thought, you know what? How can I do this in the Smokeslinger? And it took me a few weeks of experimenting to figure it out. But basically, that process of splitting those splits, and I use just the 2x2 split when I do this process.
Right.
And I'll run them at 200 to 250 for hours. I want them to sound like drumsticks when they click together. Super, super dry. So to set up that process, like when I do a couple briskets, I'll put the tuning plates in on the left side. You know, this is on the full size. So I run the tuning plates from the left side all the way over to the edge of the right firebox. And then I leave about a 2-inch gap between the tuning plates and the left wall. So you get some, I think that's creating a little toe effect to circle that air around under that brisket. Because you get pretty good color this way on the bottom of it too.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have those tuning plates in, and then on the left side, you'll have a grate on the lower shelf, and that's where you'll place the brisket. This places the thermometer above the brisket, so you're reading temperature above the brisket like you would in an offset. So you're reading that temperature based on a top-down cook. And then you got the exhaust vents above it, right?
Right.
So that's kind of how I set that up. I'll be using the upper left exhaust vents. I'll be using the lower right firebox. I'll get a good bed of charcoal going in that. And then I'll stack those splits about every 3 inches, just like they were when they were dried out. So left to right and layer them front to back above that charcoal box. And then stack them this way, and this way. And I'll stack them 1.5 feet tall. So before they start burning, because they're going to burn really quick, they'll catch really fast, and you don't want that. So get them stacked up in there. You can even, if you wanted to, take that charcoal box out, stack them in there, then slide it in while you do this. So get that stacked up like that. Shut the lid. You're going to set the lower right vent to maybe 1/8 to 1/4 open. And the same on the top 2 left vents. And just let that sit there and slowly come up to temp. And you want it to come up to about 160, 170. And then adjust your top vents if it needs more, if it needs less to get to that temp. And after it sits there for about 30 minutes, it's going to hold that temp pretty rock steady.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, I'll do that cold smoke for about 4 to 6 hours. And then I'll open the vents up and start bringing that up to about 220.
Right.
I run that temp till it hits the stall, then push to 275. And then once it starts getting closer to that 185, 180 zone, I'll take it to 300. And then you want to be there for about the last 2 hours. And that's going to get that fat cap rendered down really well. It's going to give you that really sweet, beefy flavor that'll make your tongue slap your brains out, like Myron Nixon says.
Wasn't that your nickname in high school, Sweet Beef?
No,
it wasn't. I'm just joking with you.
No.
I'd love to have this guy.
It's mostly getting called bad names.
So we've got a question here from our buddy Hojo. I'm going to bring this up on the screen because this is a great question. So he asked the question, any thought of developing a hanging setup to cold smoke sausages as they hang? I found a solution to this, but I want to go from you, El Presidente. What are you doing? Or is there a concept that maybe coming out to handle this?
There's nothing on the table at the moment.
All right. So let me tell you what I did for doing something just like this. I removed the grates, and then using the rails that you have in the back that the grates would go on, you just simply use some flat bar, or you use some round rebar, and you just put it right there. And yeah, there's a possibility it could roll around and things like that. That anything like that's possible because it doesn't have a V that it's coming into and you're putting the bar in. But if you're using something as simple as some flat bar and you just lay it across, it's not going to move anywhere. Then you simply just tie it off and it hangs. Or you use the S hooks right from the top, those hook right over the top. And then as your sausage is tied off, or you're going directly into, say, a pork chop or something, it just hangs. Or even, I got another one for you because this one makes a lot of sense. And I know people have done this. You take your cowboy ribeyes and you put your butcher twine on that and hang it, and it just drips down. The fat's just dripping the entire time. And then you can do a live, I really do that for a live fire cook. But you got to be careful. If you're using nylon thread, is your for your butcher thread, your butcher twine, it's going to melt. So you have to use something that's cotton based, or make sure you got your tuning plates in so that you don't get to a temperature that you set your string on fire, and then your steak falls down. But on a cold smoke, perfectly easy, simple solution for smoking horseshoe rings of sausage, links of sausage. It's extremely feasible. Or if you're doing, let's say you're doing some type of charcuterie. Let's say we wanted to smoke a entire chub of bologna. That's something cheap, easy to do for people. You take that whole chub of bologna, get it out of the plastic wrap. Don't put it on with that. It always has that plastic. It's on the outside. Put a couple of slits in it both ways, so it kind of looks like it has a cube around on the outside. When you cook it, it all kind of makes a pretty pattern. And you cook your cold smoke your chub of bologna like that, or salami, or whatever meat stick that you enjoy. What do you think of that, Hogel? Got your answer right there. So let's talk about plate setups for different meats and venting tips. What I'll do is I'll remove 2 to 3 plates under the direct heat zone, and I leave the rest in place for indirect cooking. I think I discussed this earlier. But what I didn't mention is that as far as the bottom vent, or the necessity there is the way you control your heat. The more that it's open, the more heat you're going to bring into it. As you close it down, the less heat. As far as the top vent, that controls the draw and the smoke retention. So if you're looking to get more of a smoky flavor, then you're going to close those down more. If you're looking for a cleaner flavor and a hotter flavor, obviously you're going to have your bottom intakes open much more, and you're going to have your upper intakes open way more. And being that there's 2 on the left and 2 on the right, those being your top vents, you have the opportunity to control which way you want the smoke to flow. That really gets us into that whole reverse flow modality, that when you're on a full-size smoke slinger, if you were to light your fire on the left side and then coming all the way across, you have your tuning plates, then what you would do is the same side that you have your fire is where you want to open your air vents at the top. That way the smoke is coming up underneath your tuning plates, coming underneath all the 8 tuning plates. Then where you have that gap on the end, it comes up and flows directly across over the top of the meat and right out those top vents. And that's how you do direct flow. I'm sorry, that's how you do, reverse offset. Got a little jammed up there for a moment. That's my beer kicking in. Love it.
Let's see, we have some questions.
Let's see what we got.
I'll tell you what I like to do with St. Louis ribs is I'll run, let's say, the right firebox, and I'm cooking like 2 to 4 racks. I put them all on one of the top grates, and I slide it to the left with the tuning plates halfway in. So I'm smoking in the beginning, kind of like an offset mode. And then towards the end, when that fat starts to render, you can see it kind of start oozing out. I slide it over that direct heat to finish it. Leave the membrane on and just score it up. And when that fat starts rendering out, it'll start dropping in those coals, and it adds a lot of moisture and smoke flavor. You want to run about 325. And then towards the end of it, when the ribs are about done, flip them over meat side down to finish off for about 10 minutes. Those are pretty amazing. So you get like a smoky flavor, but you get the direct heat flavor as well.
So we have a question here from Canned Meats. He wants to know how much room between the lower grates and the top grates, and then how much from the top grates to the lid.
The top grate to the now keep in mind the lid is two pieces. So you got a top shell, then you got a bottom shell. The outside of that lid is about 3 inches tall. The inside is about 2 inches tall. So you've got a 1 inch air gap built into this lid.
Mm-hmm.
It actually adds a lot of strength to it too. We run it to 600 and 700 degrees with zero issues on warping or anything. But basically from the top grate, it's about 6 inches from that to the inside of the lid.
Yep.
And I believe it's 5 inches, if I remember. I'm trying to remember these numbers, from the top to the lower. And then from the top grate to the bottom of the firebox is about 24 inches or so.
I believe we have a diagram. Let me go into the basement here and pull this up. I'm gonna pull this. Oh, there it is. Look at that. When you ask, you receive in life. So here are the blueprints of the full-size Smokeslinger. So this will tell us exactly what we're looking at. So it looks like you go ahead. You explain these blueprints. You're the engineer here.
So yeah, that 6.275 on the upper left. So that's about 6¼ inches from the inside of the lid to the top of that top grate. And then you've got about 4 inches from the top to the lower. And then about 4 inches from the lower to the tuning plates.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got 9 inches between the tuning plates and the top of the firebox. And on the left, you'll see it says 23.8, but that's it's right about 24 inches or so from that top cooking grate to the bottom of the cooker.
That's great info. That is great because we get these questions all the time, especially on the sales side. People are constantly calling in asking about what's the size of the cooker, where are the racks, what they can do. It's the most universal cooker on the market. So it definitely has a place for everyone, whether it's in their backyard, side yard, or for those that are competition cooks and caterers. It fits the need for each and every individual. God bless America. So here's a question that just came in here. Can you smoke and cook with direct heat at the same time?
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying about like when I do the St. Louis ribs.
Right.
On the full size, so imagine these are your two fireboxes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be running this firebox. I'll have these tuning plates in using these exhaust vents. And I'll place my meat over here on the top rack first. And so that smoke basically has to come over indirect to create a low and slow cooking condition, basically. But you can also have something over here on this grate with no tuning plates cooking direct heat. So usually I'll do like spatchcock chicken while I'm doing ribs over here.
So let's I think we have a couple other questions. Let me just see what we got here. I believe that we've got a couple of questions that are coming in. I'm going to try to get these here from Lockdown. So here we have Dustin. Can you use a Santa? No, we answered that one already. Let's get to the next one. Should one ever use a fan with a Smokeslinger? Would you ever use your industrial fan that you use in your shop to fan the flames? Is that appropriate?
Oh no, there's no need to.
It's,
I mean, it may not look at it by looking at it, but it actually has really good draw on it.
So no need for a draft controller?
No, those actually want it because they're made to run in like bursts of pulses. They actually want it just using more fuel. And yeah, I mean, I can hold temps within degrees for hours, depending on how I set it up. Or basically, talk to the guys in the group; they'll tell you.
Yep.
It's
Yep. So
unnecessary.
is there one fuel over another that you prefer? Like, what would be the best fuel? How often would you add it? And I know I went through this with some of the foods that I cook, but what are the best meats for direct heat and things like that? Seasonings, and these are questions that came up in our Facebook group. People want to know the best fuel, how often to add it, the best meats for direct heat, and seasonings.
To me, the best meat for direct heat
Yeah,
is beef.
I'm with you on that.
Beef. Fat helps you out. So the more fat you got in your meat, the more that's going to help you out. If it's really lean, it's going to be really easy to overcook. And you really got to cook it hot and quick. It's very less forgiving. So, like chicken breast.
Right.
Chicken breast has a fine line between being great and dry and stringy. But with dark meat, you can cook it 170 to 200 and it'll still be taste good. You know what I mean?
I agree with you.
Fat content. But yeah, to me, beef, maybe pork, like ribs.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't tried fish yet. I know somebody brought that up.
Yeah, fish is amazing on there. Salmon, anything that's a flaky fish. So if you're dealing with, say, like cod, stuff as simple as just same thing that I would put on for beginners. Those people that are starting off or who are still getting used to going from a gas grill over to charcoal and wood. I would say keep it simple. Go with chicken thighs, and the same way that I do chicken thighs is the same way that I would do a piece of fish like cod. I would probably start with something simple like salt, pepper, and garlic. When you get a little more advanced with your flavors, then you can start laying in some type of cumin or chili for getting a little crust building on the top. There's nothing quite like some olive oil, little butter, and fresh lemon juice squeezed over the top. I know that our mini smoke slinger guru, Dave Suss, down in Florida, he's able to go out daily on his ship, on his yacht, and he casts the line out, comes back in with that trawler. But he's got a full pursing net off the back. So that guy, he just drops it down, and the next thing you know, it's like the deadliest catch. He just the deck is just full of fish everywhere, coming back at it. And he's a show off. He has to rub that in my face daily. He knows exactly what I'm missing, those days of the sea, being a salty seaman. So the next shout out I have here. Oh, here we go. Before we go to the next shout out, we got Ryan asking reverse offset, put meat on the lower rack or the upper rack? That's a great question.
It depends. If I do that cold smoke method, I'll have it on the lower. Actually, for brisket, and this really depends on how you set it up. If I'm running the full size and I've got, let's say, my fire on the right side, I'm going to run my brisket on the left and low. So I'm reading that temp from top down like we talked about. Now with like pork ribs and chicken, I run them on the upper grate because you want to cook those a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm. What about, like, here's something I did. And this is a direct answer for Ryan about reverse offset, putting on the lower rack or the upper rack. What about when you're using both racks? Recently, I did 7 full pork shoulders, bone in, skin on the top, each one weighing between 12 to 15 pounds. And then I was able to fit another 8 full-size turkey breasts on the bottom. Why 8? Because that's all that they wanted. I believe I could have fit another 4. I could have gone 12 on the lower rack and then put 8 full pork shoulders on the top. Here's the disadvantage to doing that. You need to be very experienced with orchestration. Yeah, this is where we definitely have on our cotton liners. We have on our black only 5mm gloves. Anything that's not black is not barbecue. Don't listen to what people tell you. You have to use black. It's mandatory. And why do I say this? Because you need to lift those pork shoulders up. I'm going to start with that and take them from one side to the other. so that you can then get to the lower rack, slide that over. So you're taking basically the whole thing of meat and sliding one onto the other so that you can get underneath to be able to rotate through or remove the turkey, which comes off before the pork does. Now, why did I do the pork on the top and the turkey on the bottom? I know somebody's going to ask that. It comes down to the size of the proteins that you're cooking. The distance of the racks from the lower to the upper made more sense for me to have the turkey on the bottom rack and the larger pork butts on the top rack. However, if I was just doing one meat, I probably would have removed the top rack completely and put all the pork shoulders on the bottom, just so that, if they were larger, say I was doing hams, I could then layer the entire lower level with full hams and have even more room coming over the top. And therefore, it gives even more air circulating, the smoke circulating, covering all the meats. So that's why pro tip is make sure you have cotton liners, and you must have 5mm black barbecue gloves, or you're just not a professional. It's amateur hour. So
always remember to click your tongs twice.
You must click your tongs. If you don't, the barbecue gods, and of course Murphy's law, will always strike you. It happens to me every time I take my cooker out. So we've got another question that came in here. I want to put this. Oh, here it is. Canned Meats asking, what would you recommend for a safe and easy first cook on the Smokeslinger for someone that is very new to cooking and unfamiliar with this type of cooker? I believe I had addressed that by saying chicken thighs. What would you say?
Well, it depends on the style of cooking. If you're wanting to do direct heat, then the fattier meats like the dark meat chicken, or the chicken quarters,
right?
St. Louis ribs, spare ribs, basically any kind of fattier meat that's going to be more forgiving.
Sure.
But basically any of that stuff, if you're going direct heat and you get your fire running at around 300, you're going to be fine, as long as you just maybe peek every 5 minutes and take temp on it and start learning how fast those meats come to temp, with the different cooking styles. And the best thing you can think about is radiant heat is not so much going to be read by the thermometer. The thermometer is going to be reading mostly ambient heat. So don't worry too much about that. But I know from experience cooking on this that 300, 325 is going to be most of your kind of quicker direct heat cooks. And even that's a good temp for St. Louis ribs, direct heat. But basically, a good way to judge it, I would say on those chicken thighs, is if you run a direct heat before you put that meat on, put your hand just above that grate and see how hot it is. You probably need to be like a 4 to 5 second heat.
Yep. That's a good estimate.
So look at that and look at your coal bed. If it's burning right, you're going to see all that radiant heat on the top of that coal. That's what's going to cook the meat. That's what you're feeling with your hand. The thermometer is not going to pick that up as well. But I know usually you're going to be in that 300, 325 on the thermometer. Once you close the lid and have your vent set and all that air heats up, it's going to kind of fall in that temperature zone. But I think that start on meat side down, and then towards the end, maybe when they're getting in that 160 range, flip them over skin side down until you hit about 180. And don't use sugar. Don't use
sugar.
No sugar in your rubs, or you're just going to burn that sugar and it's going to be bitter.
No, and I was going to say one of the chief reasons for using chicken thighs is they're inexpensive. And when you're starting with new rubs, new seasonings, you don't know what you really like yet. That's the type of protein that will give you the best effect of knowing what you like, what you don't like, and how you laid it on. Frank explained this last week, and it's very true. The last rub that you put on, the last item in that rub, is the first thing you're going to taste. So be mindful of that.
I did. There's a couple of times I did the seasoning layering thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I know that once I had these ribs, you bite into these ribs and you taste like sweet, and then you taste like some savory. then this like salty would hit you, and then at the end this heat would hit. I don't know how I managed to do that, but it was pretty cool. But yeah,
So,
direct heat, sugar is not your friend.
no, it's not. So Justin was asking a question here. Let me just get to his question because this is important. He's asking, have you guys, that I guess being us, have you guys ever done a whole beef shoulder clod? They are good.
Have you done that, Dave?
I was going to ask you if you had the experience. I mean, did we?
I think you did that.
I believe we did. I think
Oh, no.
other
We
guy,
did that. We did it in Canton.
we did do it in Canton. Yeah, we did two of them.
What was it that you cooked at your house the other day? That big, was it a shoulder? Whole shoulder?
No, I was doing whole pork shoulder, but he's asking about the whole shoulder clod, which is much larger. He's talking a cow versus the pig.
No, the one that you cooked that you took to the wedding.
You're talking about the 37, 39 pound bone-in USDA brisket that was hanging on the hook.
Okay, so at the meetup in Canton, we cooked the shoulder clod.
Yeah, we did two shoulder clods. We did one on the Smokeslinger and one on the Liberty 94. And here's the thing. It hasn't come up yet, but this is important. It just happens to be that every time we put a large cut of meat on that Smokeslinger, not only does it get the same type of quality and texture of using that low and slow method of an offset cooker, but it's done in 8 hours. So going back to that whole thing earlier about how if you fill your charcoal pans properly, you can walk away. Imagine giving yourself that opportunity to be able to cook the same type of cooking flavor that you would get on your traditional offset. But now you're really doing that old school traditional pit barbecue that originated again in Texas, and you're done in 8 hours.
Oh yeah.
That took me 19 hours to do that bone-in brisket. Imagine if I would have done that. Maybe that's the next experiment, is to do that on the Smokeslinger. And this time, lesson learned, don't be greedy and think that I'm going to put the whole thing on with all that fat cap. Trim it down a bit because it's a waste of beef tallow.
Yeah, definitely trim that fat off and make tallow with it to fry those eggs in it.
Oh, yeah. Delicious.
But yeah, the Smokeslinger does cook. Seem to cook a little bit faster. I've cooked ribs in as little as 90 minutes, St. Louis ribs.
Was that just an appetizer for you?
Oh, I was in a hurry and wanted to eat some ribs, so I was seeing how fast I could push them. So I got them done in 90 minutes.
Incredible. So we've got another question coming in here from Big Bob McKinley. He's asking, what inspired you to create the Smokeslinger?
Well, I had this is way back in the day. I kind of started, man, this must have been 2006, 2008. I got a Weber kettle, charcoal grill. Started playing around with that, learned the snake method and all that. And then a friend of mine gave me his old Oklahoma Joe offset smoker, backyard smoker. So I got into that. And then I think I had a gas grill. I had a ugly drum smoker. Had all these different grills and smokers, and I was trying to figure out, how do I build something that doesn't take up half the patio, but I can set it and forget it if I want to. And the first version of this was actually basically an ugly drum that was square with an access door at the bottom and a hinged lid. That never made it past a day's work. I didn't like it. And then, to be honest, I'm trying to remember. I think I built one out of 10 gauge, and then we went to 1/4 inch on the Smokeslinger. But basically, what inspired me is I wanted to save space, be able to control temps for a very long time, and cook different ways. Kind of build a Leatherman or Swiss Army knife.
You certainly accomplished that. So I thought, the first time that I saw this, that you had in mind, being that you're in Texas, that, again, that traditional pit barbecue, that cinder block barbecue that is simple to build in the backyard, but you found a way to be able to do this with steel, retain the heat, put it on wheels, and make it mobile.
Yeah, and actually, it kind of goes back to the roots of barbecue. It's how a lot of barbecue originated, like you said, was brick pits with steel lids on top, throwing coals in it or throwing coals to the side. I guess kind of like Snow's barbecue. They still use that method.
That's right. So here we've got some questions coming in. These came in again on the Facebook group. This is a shout out to at Barbecue RE for these deep cut questions. These are the deep thought. So one of the questions he had asked is, with the use of an offset, can you use it for extra smoke with he's talking about in offset mode? Can you use it in offset mode for extra smoke with direct heat at the same time?
Yeah, we covered that one earlier. Basically, if this would be on the full size, you would do this.
Mm-hmm.
But you would just use your right or left firebox. I gravitate to the right one for some reason, but use your right firebox. Put your tuning plates in from the basically center to left, and put your smoke meats above that, and use the left exhaust vents.
Right.
And then have your grate above the charcoal to do your direct heat. Then you can do those at the same time, like that.
Great stuff. So here's another question. I'll take this one. He wants to know, is cooking the offset mode worth it for fuel and money if that's not a factor? So in other words, if we're going to burn up more wood, you don't care what it costs, whether you're ordering wood or you're chopping wood, whatever it is it worth it for that extra money to do it? I would say that for sure. If you got the time and the materials, you should go for it. The cooking offset mode gives you a clean layered heat and gives you smoke control. So I would certainly suggest doing that. And I don't really see it as a money factor. It's a time factor. You're still using that. Again, we're talking with the Smokeslinger, it's going to take 8 hours. But yeah, you're going to go through substantially more wood than if you were just going with charcoal, which gives you that longevity.
You're talking about offset mode on the Smokeslinger direct heat?
On the Smokeslinger, correct. Yeah.
Oh, no, it'll use less fuel than an offset.
Correct. But it's just, what it comes down to is the time. So the only thing you're doing in that point when you're going low and slow is you're dedicating more time than a hot and fast cook. Like you mentioned, 90 minutes for ribs. Time is money.
Oh, I guess I didn't catch the beginning. They were asking the difference between the direct heat and smoking and fuel usage.
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. You're definitely going to use more, but you want to.
So here's another question. Using mesquite. So the question is, how does mesquite work in cooking in an offset direct combo? Which is, I think that's a difficult question because your mesquite, I don't have enough science behind this to say that mesquite is going to cook faster or slower than another varietal of wood, say is compared to oak or pecan. So that's a tricky question.
We trip over mesquite where we live. Where the shop is, there's 80 acres of mesquite wood, so we cook with it a lot. Mesquite can definitely get bitter or acrid on you real easy. You want to run it clean. It produces a ton of smoke flavor. So they're talking about using mesquite in the offset and direct at the same time, right?
Correct.
So that mesquite's going to burn really hot. It's going to be great for direct heat for steaks. But even with it burning that hot, let's say you're running a 350 on your thermometer, you're going to be running about 250 on the other side that's above the tuning plates. So you can, you've got 100-degree swing basically. So yeah, you could easily do that direct heat with the smoke mode at the same time. Just put I would put the meat I'm smoking on the lower grate, so you're reading top down like you would in an offset with your heat.
I would think if I'm using mesquite, I'm just thinking because again, I was a big fatty. I'm not shy of talking about that. If I was cooking with mesquite, I think I would want to do this. Everybody says brisket. I'm going to go with beef ribs on this one. Beef ribs is my favorite. That was the thing that really got me into being dedicated to barbecue. So I'm going to go back to those bone-in, those 3-bone plate ribs, and go mesquite on this, and then blend it with oak as well in order to mellow it out. I don't have pecan by me, but I am able to get mesquite. I have to buy it at a big box store, but it's readily available.
Yeah, when I started off learning how to smoke briskets, we had a ton of mesquite and pecan.
Mm-hmm.
So I would run mesquite like the first hour, and then switch to pecan and kind of clean it up. And that always tasted pretty good to me. But weird thing is that, did you know that some people are allergic to mesquite?
I didn't know that. I grew up eating mesquite potato chips, and I never had an allergy. Well, I shouldn't say that. I did blow up like a whale from eating all of it.
My nephew's wife is allergic to mesquite. Anything cooked on mesquite. We didn't know that, so I cooked a bunch of stuff on mesquite, and she was in there eating it. And she actually, I think she had to get a steroid.
She wanted steroids?
No, she had to get an EpiPen shot.
Oh, okay. Because for the allergies. Right.
Yeah, that's how bad she reacted to it. So
she didn't come out as like, I'm all jacked up, steroided up. No, it wasn't like that.
I don't know.
Okay, just checking, because again, I had what some people would call a peanut allergy from eating all those bags of mesquite potato chips and high cholesterol and a high sodium level. But I've overcome that. So here's another question that we have: lump charcoal or wood coals? Great question. So what we're looking at is briquettes versus lump charcoal. And I'm going to throw in one more into this one because I like them a lot, is those char logs, whether they're the ones from Blue Hogs or the one from B&B. Those are the two that come to mind first. So what's your choice? When you're making that coal bed or you're cooking direct with the charcoal pan, lump charcoal, briquettes, or those char logs?
Lump charcoal if I want a cooler, smokier cook. Briquettes if I want it hot and super steady. Wood chunks, I really never use wood chunks in it. I just use a mixture of charcoal and wood splits, or eventually just switch over to running it just on wood splits.
Yeah.
But it depends on the cook. If I want like some super intense direct heat, I'm going to use the briquettes. Or if I want a really long, sustained, super controlled cook, I'll use the briquettes. But then I'll use for like a low and slow cook, I'll use those, and then use the thin splits. And they don't have to be super dry, just, seasoned well. But you'll throw those in there every hour or so. So it really depends. Long story short, smokier and cooler, the lump. Hotter, more steady and longer, the briquettes. And then, if you really want to stick to the truth and smoke a brisket right, you're going to use the wood splits.
Yeah, I'm with you. So for the guys that are coming over from burn barrels, not burn barrels. Burn barrels is where this question came from for wood coals. It just hit me. But going back to the wood chunks, those that are coming from drum smokers or Weber Smoky Mountains, they're used to using wood chunks along with their charcoal. And one of the techniques is to bury the wood chunks underneath the charcoal so that as it's burning from the top down, it'll ignite those wood chunks, and then they'll smolder and you get the smoky flavor. But in this case, what he's asking is wood coals. And it just came to me because he's talking about the burn box. So the wood coals, he's referring to, would you rather go with lump charcoal, B&B, Jealous Devil, whoever you're using, or do you want to go with the wood coals coming out of the burn box, where you're going to burn them down separately and then shovel them over for the best control, like we did with the whole hog? What do you prefer, lump charcoal or those wood coals when you burn them down in the burn box?
It depends on how invested you are into this,
Right.
and what your end result is going to be. I think if you're burning those wood coals down, you're going to get more smoke.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't just burn them, too long. If you just chopping those off the splits as quick as you can, letting them fall to the bottom, those are going to be a lot smokier. For the whole hog, I'll definitely go that way if you want to be true to it.
So I'm going to say here, for the people that don't know what a burn box is, since this is like direct heat cooking 101, a burn box is a steel or brick chamber where you build a fire, you burn logs, whole logs that are at the top. So you have a fire burning at the bottom, the fire burns its way up and it's burning these whole logs, and you just keep feeding more whole logs on. Then you transfer the hot coal that's falling down onto your cooking surface. So let's go back to the Smokeslinger. When you open up your firebox doors at the bottom, you're pulling out your charcoal pans, you're taking out the rails that are on the side, and now from your burn box, you're shoveling the hot coals directly into the bottom of your Smokeslinger and then leveling them out so that you're cooking from, let's say it's a whole hog. You're cooking the hams and the shoulders, so you position in the four corners. And then when you flip your hog over, then you would take the coals and start to layer them out so that the pig skin that's now directly in the range of the fire, you're able to crisp that up. So you have more control when you're looking at doing the burn box method using hot wood coals than you do unless you're taking your burn box, you're taking the charcoal baskets out and then you're just burning with your charcoal directly at the bottom. Let me get back to you, because just in case there's an audience member out there that doesn't understand a burn box. How about global barbecue on the Smokeslinger? Cooking different type of cuisines. Is there anything from the world cuisine that you found to be superior when you're cooking on your Smokeslinger?
Just really, really, really good beef, Argentina style. And most of that's going to be your thicker cuts that are going to cook in about usually 2 hours.
Right.
Or so.
Yep.
Running like a 5 to 8 second heat, direct heat, like picanhas, tri-tip. I don't know, help me out with some cuts.
Well,
name of cuts, Richard.
So here's some of the things. I would say if we were looking at, let's go Mexican, because it's so simple. You're in Texas and every Tuesday is Taco Tuesday. So you've got your carne asada. Whether you're using flank steak or skirt steak, you got your carne asada. Then you've got your barbacoa. Barbacoa is very simple. You can go with beef cheeks, or you take the entire head of the cow, something that we were teasing, and put that onto the Smokeslinger, go low and slow. A lot of people will wrap that in banana leaves. Traditionally, the way that that's done is you dig a hole in the ground, have hot coals going, and you'd wrap up that head, stick it in the ground, and bury it. Here on the Smokeslinger, I think the similar method would be to create a low and slow, good fire at the bottom, and then wrap that cow head in some type of towel or something else, so that the grease and the juices are absorbing into that towel. And at the same point, they're not just dripping down onto the fire. You're keeping everything moist. Maybe even a cheesecloth might work. And all that gelatinous substance is coming out of the head. That's where, as you're pulling this together, you're getting that delicious barbacoa. Or you can even go, and I'm going to get into a recipe for this one, going Mexican, is doing like a smoked salsa roja. So using the firebox, using the charcoal pans, putting all of your veggies directly into that. So you're doing like a caveman cook and smoking your fire roasted salsa that way. Now, if we were doing, say we want to go Greek, we want to go Mediterranean, Well, then you're talking souvlaki. You've got your chicken souvlaki, your lamb souvlaki. Once you have your meat marinated, put a skewer right through. For those people who aren't familiar with a skewer, think of that as your kebabs. That's what you're making. So make a lamb kebab, make a chicken kebab. You could do lamb ribs. You can even do fire roasted eggplant directly in the firebox. That's one way. Or take the charcoal pans, raise it up onto the tuning plates, and then you have the opportunity to cook from the top level or lower level grates and roast that eggplant nicely,
Almost like a yakitori style.
like a yakitori style. That's a good way of putting it. Which with yakitori style, guess what you brought me into? Not only Japanese, but the Koreans. So now you've got bulgogi beef, you've got your pork belly, you've got your smoked kimchi. So there's an idea for Korean food. If we want to go southern, then you got your hot chicken, you got your pork steaks, smoked meatloaf, easy stuff to do. Getting over to the Caribbean, then you got your jerk chicken. Who doesn't like to jerk their bird? Jerk chicken's delicious. Jerk pork, grilled pineapple, all of these things. Getting in that acai berry, the Scotch bonnet peppers. I roast those up, and then I'll make that into a paste, and I'll coat the chicken or the pork with that to really get that like flaming hot. And I serve that with a Johnny cake. And the Johnny cakes I make right there in a pan. For those people who aren't familiar with Johnny cakes, it's cornbread. So you have cornbread and you have jerk chicken or jerk pork with your grilled pineapple.
Tell them about sausage gravy and biscuits.
I will pass on that. I had the opportunity. I'll take the sausage. I'll take
You
the
didn't have
biscuit.
good. You didn't. They didn't do it justice.
It's just from a southern aspect, it's an acquired flavor. There's a lot of foods that I've eaten around the world that again are acquired flavors. When I was in Cambodia, I had some acquired foods that things like bats, and they called it. Let's see if you can figure out what this is. They called it Toto. What do you think Toto was?
A dog.
That's correct. I knew you'd get that one. So there's a lot of acquired flavors and foods that are out there in the world. At this point, here in the great states of America, I haven't acquired that flavor for biscuits and gravy just yet. Sausage, yes. The biscuits, yeah, I can go for those too. Not yet on the gravy. Not white gravy. Brown gravy for like beef gravies, chicken gravies, but
I got to make an El Presidente rule.
oh, here we go.
No dogs being cooked on the Smokslingers.
Not even on a rotisserie?
No.
Oh. I think it's funny to walk with my son through Walmart and someone's got a dog that they're walking around, their little chihuahua. And I go, how would I prepare that? And my son looks at me, he's like, that's a hot dog, Dad. That's a hot dog. Anyway, let's get over to the next segment because talking about food brings us into recipes. So I created for you, I call this one, get ready, drum roll, the El Presidente fire crusted ribeye. You didn't even know this one was coming. Oh, Bob McKinley saying I can cook cowhead, but not biscuits and gravy. That's correct, Bob. Cowhead, biscuits, yes. Maybe, you know what? Why don't we pull the cowhead after it's cooked and put that onto the biscuit and serve it with something that's not just like a roux? Because to me, that gravy that I had was just way too much flour. It was very much like creating a roux that we learn in French cuisine. So, Bob, let me teach you about El Presidente's fire crusted ribeye. He doesn't realize that I watch him out of the corner of my eye and I catch what he's doing, whether it's on a live stream or live cooking. So while El Presidente claims he doesn't want to open up a restaurant and he just enjoys cooking, he does have quite the portfolio, quite the recipe book, we'll say. So the reason why I give this steak the title that it does of El Presidente is because it's earned that title. You ready for this one, El Presidente?
Give it to me.
Okay. So we take that ribeye steak. Let's do this the right way. We're going to use a good prime ribeye steak, or in your case, Your Highness, a Wagyu steak, because I know you're now able to get this readily. Let's go 1.5 inches thick. Okay. nice cut.
At
We're going
least.
to put in a little kosher salt, some black pepper, a little garlic powder. And as far as the oils go, I know that you love to use your tallow. But for this one, because the meat is already loaded up with fat, the marbleization, the striations all going through, we're going to use a little avocado oil. The reason for this is that it has a very high smoke level, very high temperature, which
Right.
is great to be able to coat the outside. Optionally, I've seen you do this. You've used, I believe it was rosemary on the outside. So I'm going to stick with the rosemary. So we're going to bring that meat to room temperature, pat it dry, coat it with that oil, and then put the seasoning on. I've seen you fire up the Smokeslinger. It's gotten up there to 550 to 650. Sear it over the coals, 2 to 3 minutes per side, and then let it rest for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then you slice it against the grain. And as far as that rosemary goes, throw that right on the coals, and then boom, steakhouse crust with pit smoked sole.
Oh yeah,
that's the El Presidente.
I gotta go get a steak tomorrow.
You want to try this out? I made this recipe just for you.
Oh yeah, those steaks, dude, they're just from that butcher are so amazing.
And for those that are interested in trying it, next weekend, El Presidente is holding a Smokeslinger meetup, spelled MEAT. And that butcher is going to be providing you with some of these finest cuts. Am I right?
Oh yeah, we got like a 21-pound brisket, tri-tip, picanha, ribeye, St. Louis, chicken. You definitely don't want to miss it.
And that's going to be at the Canton Fairgrounds. Is that correct?
Correct.
On Saturday. What day is that? That Saturday?
17th.
The 17th. Saturday the 17th, Canton Fairgrounds, the El Presidente Smokeslinger meetup of an event not to be mixed. Unfortunately, I will not be in attendance. However, El Presidente will be. Stick close to them. So here's another one that I have. I'm going to use, this one's really mine. For those that are into the chicken thighs, doing some sweet heat. You get your bone-in chicken thighs, and then you make your dry rub. It's got a little brown sugar. I know that you got to watch with the sugar so you don't get a fire, and you don't caramelize it. But I do use a little bit of brown sugar, some paprika, garlic powder, cayenne pepper. It's up to you how much you want to use. I like a little bit of that burn, and of course we're talking sweet heat, so I like that heat. Salt and pepper, and then for my glaze, I use honey and some chipotle paste. So with this one, I season my chicken thighs and I let them sit for about an hour to an hour and a half. Then I sear them direct heat, skin side down at first. Then I flip them over, glaze them for about the last 5 minutes, and I let them cook for about 175 to allow that glaze to set. In order to do that, it's necessary to open the lid, let a lot of that heat dissipate, and then you need to be able to control those smiley face dampers on the front and get them, you got to lower them way down. So for the last 5 minutes or so, that's where I'll get them in about 175. And then when they come off, I let them rest for about 5 minutes, and that way they can get tacky. They're sweet, they're spicy, juicy, and it's a simple go-to chicken recipe for anybody in a pinch.
Speaking of chicken, that Yardbird seasoning.
Yep.
It's really good stuff.
It is. That's why that's why Todd Michael Johns won the American Royal, 4-time world champ, and sold 50 million tons of that rub. 50 million tons. Not 5 million, 50 million. It's an insane number. Let me see what we got here. I think we got some more questions coming in that we want to address. Let me see what we got. So, Beth Suss, aka David. Look at him; he's a handsome man. He's talking about the advantages and disadvantages between the mini and the full-size Smokeslinger.
Well, the advantage of the mini is it's a lot easier to move around by yourself if you need to. Easier to load on a trailer. I think it's going to be dependent on your needs. Are you cooking for a big family, or is it just you and the wife? Because the full-size Smokeslinger, I mean, I've put 60 to 90 pounds of meat on it. The mini Smokeslinger, for instance, you could probably put three trimmed 10-pound briskets on it, as an example.
Right.
So I think it's not so much disadvantages and advantages. I think it's more about space and fitting your needs. The only advantage I would see on the full size is meat capacity if you need it, and more versatility in the way that you set it up. Like a lot of guys are asking if they could do direct heat and smoke at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you can't really do that on the mini, but on the full size, you could definitely do that. So it's just things like that. What fits your needs, and how much versatility do you want?
It sounds like the majority thing here. The big differentiating factor is the footprint, is the size. The mini is a 24 by 30. The full size is a 24 by 48. They're, as far as the cooking styles, aside from what you were just mentioning, be able to do direct heat and offset at the same time. That's one differentiating factor. The other one comes down to, do you want one firebox or two fireboxes? But besides that, they're identical. It's the same cooker. You're cooking the exact same ways. The difference is the footprint.
For the most part, yeah.
So here's a question from Scott Drosky. He's saying, my full-size Smokeslinger is easier to run, maintain, and more versatile than my Yoder 640. Thank you. He's saying that does anybody want to buy his Yoder? Would anyone want to? He wants to eliminate that. So if he can unload that, I think that he probably has a Liberty 94 coming to him. I think that deep down inside, that's what he wants, or his wife is going to go get another toy for herself. And she has quite the collection of large sewing machines. So if she gets a sewing machine, he gets a Liberty 94 offset. It's a good trade. Somebody's got to embroider the barbecue towels in the house.
TD said he put a 37-pound hog on the mini.
Yep.
Am I reading that right?
That's what he said. You can fit a 37-pound one on it.
Right side. Yeah, TD, and he's one of the mini ninjas. But I heard he might be getting a full size.
I heard something very similar to that as well. He's been the master on the mini, and now he's going to step it up to the full size. He's ready for the man's game. So we got a question here from Bob. Actually, he's saying pork over poultry. Any concerns about contaminations from the drippings? Absolutely not. Unless the people who were ordering the turkey at the bottom were kosher or Muslim, I don't think that there was any concerns about contamination, or for those that don't eat swine. With regards to flavor, it added to that flavor profile. The pork butts had one type of seasoning on it. Obviously, you also have the pork fat that's dripping down onto the turkey that had a separate type of seasoning on it. And I had put some duck fat on the outside. I love to use duck fat. So I had sprayed down the turkey breasts with duck fat. Prior to that, I also put on, hint, Duke's mayo, because it's got Twain, baby. So we put a little bit of that on, and then along with that turkey breast, those that had seen the video, some of that turkey breast was seasoned with the Meat Church D's Nuts. So I had D's Nuts on breast. Nothing?
Sounds like an interesting night.
My goodness. I thought I thought I would have got a rise out of you with that one. Nothing. Is it Matt that you don't like, or D's Nuts? You don't like these nuts? Got him! No, it didn't work. All right, so let's see what we got here. So Canned Meats is asking, I've never used a reverse flow. Can you explain why or when you would run offset versus reverse offset mode? And what would be the difference in the results? For example, a brisket.
I don't. To me, when I think of reverse mode, it's when you got all the plates in to one side, and you're running your fire under that end that's closed off. That's basically what I call the reverse mode or offset mode. Um, the only other way I would do it that would be considered offset is like in the full size where you got the plates halfway over and you got your meat over here and you got your fire down here. So it's basically either way is indirect. I think, is that what he's asking?
Well, he's asking, like, so for example, when you're cooking reverse offset, you're getting the radiant heat from underneath. When you're when you're cooking direct offset, you're just getting the flow of the smoke that's coming through. So reverse gives you the radiant heat from underneath and the smoke that's flowing over the top. Again, reverse,
Yeah.
you have the fire underneath, the plates are directly above it where your meat is, and then on the other side, the smoke is coming underneath, the smoke is coming down around and coming up over the top. Whereas if we were just doing a standard offset, we might have the fire here and the plate open, so the heat is coming up with the smoke and then coming across. So it's the difference between cooking with radiant heat versus cooking with that convective heat.
Yeah, in the reverse flow mode, if you want to call it that, you are going to get some radiant heat off of the tuning plates. If you've got radiant heat coming off of your fire or your charcoal. So the only time I really do what you're considering an offset mode is if I want to like cold smoke and get really low and slow.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I want to smoke something and then slide it over to go direct heat. Or do direct and smoking at the same time. But if I've got like, 6 or 8 briskets to cook, I'm going to do the reverse flow mode and probably keep it around 220. Running on the top grades because you got to keep in mind that thermometer is reading below the meat.
Yep.
So above that meat, it could be 30 degrees so or hotter than what that gauge is reading. Something to keep in mind.
The other thing here, Heath brought it up before I could get it out of my mouth. I was waiting for you to get this in there. And I like how he has Wakanda Forever right here. Great picture. Look at this. He's got the Black Panther. So Wakanda Forever, buddy. Here's the thing. Depending upon where you're cooking, it also it's important when you're using reverse offset, how you set your exhaust. So with the reverse flow modality, you've got the heat directly underneath with your tuning plates, and right on that same side, the your chimney, the airflow. You don't have a chimney on your Smokeslinger, but you have air vents. The vents that are open are the ones that are on the same side as your protein and also as your where your heat source is. With offset, you would be opening the other side so that as the smoke is coming up and over, it's then going out the other side through that air vent. So I'm glad that Heath brought that up. That was important that we mentioned that. Heath cooks with vibranium because he's from Wakanda. So what do we got next? I know there's got to be another. Oh, here we go. Bob jumping in again. In traditional offset mode, thoughts on using a water pan to help reduce or tamper down radiant heat from under the tuning plates? Excellent question. I think that behind the scenes, we kicked this idea around.
No, you don't. I've experimented with the water pan. It's just too much moisture. The Smokeslinger keeps a lot of moisture in the chamber when it cooks. That's why it produces such juicy ribs.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do if I want to knock that heat down is I'll take the lower grates out and like double wrap them in aluminum foil and put them back in, and that creates another layer of direct heat protection. But yeah, water is not going to be your friend. It's going to ruin your bark and steam your meat.
That's correct. Yep. You don't want to steam the meat. That ruins the cook. In fact, there's a gentleman, Chris in El Paso. He decided he was going to sear his tomahawk with the tuning plate still in. And underneath this, he thought he was going to catch the drippings, but in the pan, he had water. So what do you think happened? The water gets to a certain temperature, boiling temperature, 212 degrees. And all he did was end up steaming from the underneath his steak. That came out more along the ways of kind of braising it on the grill versus being able to sear it off.
Yeah, it's just not dry enough inside of it to use water. Especially if you've got 40 or 50 pounds of meat in it, and once all that meat starts hitting the stall and pushing that water out, you'll see the exhaust vents sometimes start sweating just from the moisture in the meat.
Mm-hmm. Sure do.
And when that fat drips into the fire,
I love it.
It smells so good. But yeah, it that too produces moisture.
This is a great question from Hojo. He was there with us the day that we had the burn barrel. We were doing the pig. So he's asking, could you also get the lump charcoal going in another cooking vessel and then shovel those into the slinger? You sure could. Just like when you're starting up a chimney, and I know a lot of people are familiar with these devices. There's Weber, there's other brands that are out there. You put all your charcoal into the chimney, light that, and then you dump that into, onto a pile of charcoal to get it lit. You could definitely do the same thing with the burn barrel. I would say, Dustin, your burn barrel would probably hold easily 60 pounds, if not more, of lump charcoal. You could definitely get it lit that way and go for a while. I don't know if you would be sacrificing the flavor. You would definitely be losing the experience.
Yeah, I think if you're going to feed it coals, you need to be burning wood. I think it's going to be hard to maintain the right amount of that lump charcoal.
Right.
Because it's going to catch and spread so fast.
Yep.
You're going to be constantly feeding it while you're constantly pulling it and pulling away from it.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. And I'm thinking lump charcoal, being that it's already wood, but those pieces are already the optimal size to pitch into the bottom. Whereas when we're taking our whole logs and burning them down, we're trying to get them to the size of the lump charcoal that's in the bag. Well, that was a great question. So I got to tell you, Dustin, this was a pleasure having you here tonight. This episode, as you know, this is brought to you by Smokeslinger Pits, American made in Kaufman, Texas. Anyone who's looking for a Smokeslinger pit, visit us on smokeslinger.com or email me, dave@smokerbuilder.com for your quote today. Thank you for joining us. That's a wrap on Direct Heat Cooking 101. From Q&A to Killer Cooks, we brought the fire tonight. Keep practicing, keep learning, and never stop playing with fire. And that's what a burn barrel looks like. So stay smoky, stay juicy, and always keep it meat forward. We'll see you on next week's live stream. Peace out.
See ya.